My most memorable project was the Combank Stadium in Western Sydney that finished up a couple of years ago. That achieved a LEED V4 gold rating, which was one of the first stadiums in the world to get that rating. It was really challenging because that's an international rating that rates quality, sustainability outcomes on the project. But it did teach me a lot about how stadiums really work and some of the challenges we have on them as well. We've all been to lots of stadiums and sat looking at a game or an event, and I suddenly realised they're all very inward looking. You know, you're building this box, this building that looks inwards at something, which means sometimes from the outside it can feel, you know, a bit monolithic, a bit prison-like almost, where you can't get in, you don't really know what's going on. And I think that was a big lesson, is to say, well, how can we create stadiums that have an outward look and connect better with the community? There's a number of things that stadiums just have to do. For example, during the week, they're probably sitting there fairly dormant and not doing much. And then over the weekend, they ramp up for a massive event, but then they drop down again. And it's very hard to design for that peaky usage pattern, because you're having to design for an enormous facility to come up to mode very, very quickly, do what it needs to do, and then drop down again. And that tends to mean it becomes very inefficient in either when it's sitting dormant or when it's at full mode. And so one of the challenges, and one of the things I think we need to think about is, well, how do we make the stadium a 24/7 facility so that it can be used when there's an event on and function really well and efficiently and provide what people need, but it can also be used every day by the community. So that means, I think, thinking about the stadium and that facility as part of an urban precinct, because a lot of these big stadium, like the one in Western Sydney, are in areas where there's a huge community environment out there. We think about some of the other stadiums that are right in a CBD. There is an existing infrastructure there that they could tap into. We can generate a lot of energy and a lot of water at a really simple level because they are physically big objects. But because of that peak mode, they can't actually use that. So can we distribute that energy and water throughout the community around it? Can we create a space that people can come to? Could there be office facilities in there? Could we have education facilities in there that can perhaps play off the fact that it's an event or a sporting facility, so it may educate people in sports, but create a community environment, create a space that people can be in. So actually, it's being used all the time, and once in a while, a big event comes in, and it may be that you go, we can make it a temporary event scenario where you bring in extra equipment, maybe extra air conditioning, for example, extra seating that comes in just for that small event and then disappears off somewhere else. So you're not buying brand new materials, you're reusing materials that are already being used, and you're designing for the long-term legacy of that. There's always going to be a need to demolish and change something, and that's just the nature of what we do. We don't always have a greenfield site to start with. So we've really got to think carefully about the design of the final piece before we just jump on ahead and demolish that. And that's really important on large stadia, because they are materials. That's what they are. They're structure, they're huge objects with a lot of material in them. And there's an opportunity, especially with existing stadium that may be demolished and need to be upgraded or changed or rebuilt, that we can reuse a lot of that material in the redesign of the stadium. But it's very difficult to do that after that's occurred. So if you can look at something that's already there, understand, you know, the componentry of it, the strength of the objects and the materials in there, the size and the shape, because stadiums have a very distinct shape, and take that forward into the design of the new stadium, you know, maybe mimicking the curve of the seating, because structurally that's very important. You might be able to reuse a significant portion, which downstream impact means there are some cost savings, but that has a huge impact to embodied energy on stadiums, and that's a massive part of the stadium issue. And embodied energy, that amount of energy that goes into the materials and the creation of the object, once it's built, it's done. You can't change it. You can change operational, you can't change embodied. Having an event like the Olympics does catalyse the industry to say, well, there's a significant amount of change that can occur because this event is coming. We've got other infrastructure projects like Cross River Rail happening. So there's almost a convergence at that time when the Olympics is happening, when all those infrastructure pieces are starting to come together. But you have to set some very clear and pretty tough goals now, because all of these projects are decades long in some cases. And if you don't set a very tough goal now, by the time it's done, it'll be kind of business as usual, and we won't have achieved that high goal. So the importance of how the government and the Olympics Committee, for example, is set up to say we want to see world-leading sustainability so that we can achieve our carbon neutral goals, so that we can achieve environments that people can actually still survive in and respond to climate. So I think big events do catalyse cities and states and countries to create change, but it's really important to think about the legacy that leaves. That's just a small event in time. It's not the end goal. It's the start of something that creates a longer legacy.